Nanny washed the newborn in the kitchen sink, but the heir father saw it and lost it. Michael Parker felt his blood boil when he saw the scene through his phone's security camera. The nanny he had hired just 2 days ago was washing his newborn son in the kitchen sink of the mansion as if he were just any utensil. At 32, the businessman and heir to one of the largest construction companies in inland Los Angeles couldn't believe his eyes. Emily, the 28-year-old who had seemed so polite during the interview, was holding his 3-week-old baby with her hands inside that stainless steel sink while water ran over the tiny body. Michael let the documents fall onto his office desk and bolted toward the elevator. His footsteps echoed through the marble hallway as he climbed the 2 floors separating his home office from the kitchen. His fury grew with every second, fueled by the feeling that he'd been deceived by this woman's humble appearance and impeccable resume. When he reached the kitchen, the scene looked even more absurd to him. Emily Wilson, in her spotlessly clean beige uniform and hair tied in a perfect bun, held the baby with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with what Michael considered complete madness. "What do you think you're doing?" he shouted, making Emily flinch slightly but not let go of the child. The baby, who had been calm until then, began to whimper at the aggressive tone of his father's voice. Emily looked at Michael calmly, her brown eyes radiating a serenity that only irritated him further. "Mr. Parker, I can explain." "Explain?" He stepped closer, fists clenched. "You're bathing my son in the kitchen sink, the same sink where we wash dishes, where we prepare food." Emily continued holding the baby carefully, wrapping him in a soft towel she had prepared beside the sink. Her voice remained low and controlled, even in the face of her employer's outburst. "The bathroom heater in his nursery broke overnight, sir. The water temperature wasn't right for a bath. When I woke up at 5 this morning for his feeding, I noticed little Ethan's body temperature was dangerously low. He needed a warm bath urgently." "And you thought the solution was to use my kitchen? The sink where the staff washes their hands? The water here was at the perfect temperature, and I sterilized the entire sink first. The baby was starting to show signs of hypothermia, Mr. Parker. I couldn't wait until morning to call a technician." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Michael took Emily's words as an insult. Hypothermia. This simple woman thought she knew more about his own son than he did? The house had central heating, perfect climate control. How could his baby possibly have hypothermia? "You're fired," he said, with a coldness that made Emily blink slowly. "Pack your things and get out of my house now." "Mr. Parker, please let me explain better. Newborns struggle to regulate their body temperature. When the heater broke..." "I said you're fired." He raised his voice again. "Hand me my son and get out." Emily took a deep breath and passed the baby to his father. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a deep sadness Michael couldn't interpret. The baby immediately began crying harder in his father's arms. "Your things will be at the gate in 10 minutes. Michael turned his back and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Emily alone. The young woman looked at the sink where she had bathed the baby with such care. She wiped away a tear that insisted on rolling down her face and headed to the maid's room where she had slept only 2 nights. In her mind echoed the words her mother always said, "My dear, there are people in this world who look at us and only see our old clothes, our simple home. They can't see our heart." As she packed her few belongings into the small suitcase, Emily picked up a piece of paper from the dresser and wrote a few words. She folded it carefully and left it on the table, next to a small bottle of lavender essential oil she had brought from home. 20 minutes later, when Michael came downstairs to make sure Emily had left, he found only the note. "Mr. Michael, when appearances deceive, we lose the chance to see who truly cares. Lavender oil helps premature babies relax. May God bless you and little Ethan. Emily." He crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash, along with the bottle of oil. His irritation still burned fiercely, fueled by the feeling that he had been emotionally manipulated. He would hire a nanny from an agency that same day, someone with references from well-known families, not a stranger who had responded to a simple ad in the local paper. The rest of the morning passed in calls to specialized agencies. Michael explained the situation the same way each time. He had fired the previous nanny for incompetence and needed a replacement immediately. 3 candidates were interviewed that same day. The first, Barbara, was 45 and had 20 years of experience with high-class families. Her impeccable resume included references from prominent businessmen in the area. The second, Rachel, was a 24-year-old recent graduate in early childhood education, specializing in infant care. The third, Monica, was 38 and arrived in a flawless uniform with an extremely professional demeanor. Michael chose Barbara, impressed by her references and the confidence she showed when discussing routines and newborn care. She would start the next day with a salary 30% higher than what he had paid Emily. The following morning, when Barbara took over caring for Ethan, Michael finally managed to focus on work. He had an important meeting with Japanese investors interested in a luxury condominium project in the area. The deal could bring millions to the family construction business. Around 3 in the afternoon, during a break in the meeting, Michael heard persistent crying coming from the upper floor. The sound pierced through the mansion's thick walls, something that had rarely happened when Emily was caring for the baby. He excused himself from the investors and went upstairs to check. He found Barbara pacing back and forth in the nursery, holding Ethan, clearly frustrated. The baby was crying inconsolably, his face red and fists clenched. "What's going on?" Michael asked. "I don't know, Mr. Michael. He started crying an hour ago and won't stop. I've tried the bottle, changing his diaper, rocking him. Nothing works." "Was he fine this morning?" "Yes, sir. He slept normally until noon, took the bottle without any issues, but after his afternoon nap, this fussiness started." Michael took his son in his arms and noticed the baby's skin felt colder than usual. A pang of worry shot through his chest. Ethan kept crying, now with an intensity that seemed almost desperate. "Maybe it's colic," Barbara suggested. "It's common at this age." "But he's never had colic before," Michael said, gently rocking Ethan, trying to soothe the cries. Over the next few days, the situation repeated itself. Ethan cried for hours on end, especially in the afternoon and early evening. Barbara tried every technique she knew, but nothing seemed to work. Michael began to question whether he had made the right choice. On the 4th day, during a particularly difficult early morning, Michael woke up to the sound of his son's crying echoing through the house. He went down to the baby's room and found Barbara visibly exhausted, holding Ethan, who was crying with a worrisome intensity. "Mr. Parker, I think we should consider taking him to the doctor. This crying isn't normal." For the first time since firing Emily, Michael thought about how calmly she had handled Ethan. The baby rarely cried under her care, and when he did, she always managed to soothe him quickly. "I'll call the pediatrician," he said, picking up the phone. Dr. Robert Thompson, the family's pediatrician for over 15 years, answered even though it was 4 in the morning. He had known Michael since childhood and was aware of the importance of the Parker Construction Company in the city. "Michael, bring Ethan to the office first thing today. Newborns who cry like this might be signaling a problem." By 7 in the morning, father and son were at the doctor's office. Dr. Thompson examined Ethan carefully, checking his temperature, reflexes, and breathing. The baby was calmer in the medical setting, but still showed signs of discomfort. "His temperature is a bit low," the doctor observed. "He's having trouble maintaining body heat. Tell me about his routine, his feeding, the environment he's in." Michael explained the change in nannies and the difficulties Barbara was having in calming Ethan. He deliberately left out the incident with the kitchen sink. "Michael, I know you'd rather not talk about this, but I need to know. How was Ethan's behavior with the previous nanny?" The question caught Michael off guard. He hadn't mentioned Emily, but Dr. Thompson seemed to suspect there was more to the story. "Why do you ask?" "Because babies this age quickly form bonds with those who care for them, with affection and competence. An abrupt change can cause stress, which manifests through excessive crying and difficulty regulating body temperature." Michael felt growing discomfort. He didn't want to admit that he might have made a mistake firing Emily so hastily. The previous nanny, she took good care of him, but she did something I considered inappropriate. "What exactly?" Michael hesitated. Mentioning the kitchen sink would make him seem unreasonable. especially if Dr. Thompson found Emily's actions justifiable. She bathed him in a place I thought was unsuitable. Dr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, waiting for more details. When Michael didn't elaborate, the doctor continued the examination. I'll prescribe some measures to help Ethan calm down. Keep the nursery temperature stable. Use appropriate clothing for premature babies, even though he wasn't premature. And consider relaxation massage techniques. Massage? Yes, gentle movements on his chest and back with appropriate oils. Lavender is particularly effective for soothing fussy babies. The mention of lavender made Michael remember the bottle Emily had left behind, the one he'd thrown away. A pang of regret hit him, but he quickly pushed it aside. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Back at the mansion, Michael instructed Barbara on the doctor's recommendations. She tried the massages, but her hands seemed clumsy, and Ethan continued resisting her care. The crying persisted, now accompanied by a refusal to eat properly. By the end of the week, the situation had become unbearable. Ethan had lost weight, cried almost constantly, and Barbara showed clear signs of exhaustion. Michael began to question if there was something wrong with his son that the doctors couldn't identify. It was Mrs. Margaret, the family's housekeeper for over 20 years, who brought information that would change everything. She had worked in the house even before Michael was born and knew every corner of the mansion. Mr. Michael, may I speak with you privately? They met in the library, far from Barbara and the crying baby upstairs. It's about the young woman you fired last week, Mrs. Margaret began, her hands nervously clasped. Emily? What about her? I saw her doing something strange the night before you found her in the kitchen. Michael leaned forward, intrigued. She was in the living room, looking at the old family photos. The ones in your mother's album, sir. She was looking at them and crying softly. Crying, why? I don't know, sir, but she spent a long time staring at one particular photo, a photo of you as a baby. A strange chill ran down Michael's spine. Why would a stranger be interested in old family photos? Why would she cry looking at a picture of him as a baby? There's more, Mr. Michael. I heard her whispering a prayer. She said something about protecting once again, like I protected before. Once again? Like I protected before? Michael repeated the words, trying to make sense of them. I think the young woman knew the family somehow, sir. The way she looked at the photos, it wasn't the curiosity of a maid. It was something personal. Michael felt a knot in his stomach. There was something about Emily he didn't know. Something that might explain her dedication to caring for Ethan and the sadness in her eyes when she was fired. Mrs. Margaret, where are those photos? In your mother's room, sir. In the blue album she always keeps on the dresser. Michael went upstairs to his mother's room, Elizabeth Parker. She was visiting her sister in San Diego and wouldn't return until the following week, but she always left the key with Mrs. Margaret for cleaning. The blue album was exactly where it always was, on the solid wood dresser that had been in the family for decades. Michael opened it carefully, flipping through the pages until he found the photos from when he was a baby. There were dozens of images, him in his mother's arms just after leaving the hospital, his first baths, his first laughs. But one particular photo caught his attention. In it, he appeared as a newborn, just a few weeks old, in the arms of a young woman who wasn't his mother. The woman in the photo was about 20, with dark hair tied in a simple ponytail, smiling tenderly as she held baby Michael. There was something familiar about her face, but he couldn't place it. On the back of the photo, in his mother's cursive handwriting, it read, Michael at 3 weeks, Margaret caring for him after the fever, May 1992. Margaret. Michael had never heard that name connected to his childhood. Fever. What fever? He kept flipping through the album and found more photos of the same woman. In one, she was bathing baby Michael in a sink, not the current kitchen sink, but a smaller one, likely from the old washroom in the house. The world seemed to stop around Michael. The resemblance between that scene photographed over 30 years ago and what he had seen Emily doing was unsettling. But even more unsettling was the woman's face in the photo. Despite the decades, despite the changes time had brought, Michael began to see similarities between Margaret and Emily. The shape of their eyes, the gentle way they held the baby, even their posture. His mind raced to process the information. Could Emily be Margaret's daughter? Could she have known about the connection between her family and the Parkers? But if that were true, why hadn't she mentioned anything during the interview? Why had she presented herself as a complete stranger? Michael rushed downstairs to Mrs. Margaret's room, where she was organizing the linen closet. "Mrs. Margaret, I need you to tell me everything you know about a woman named Margaret who worked here when I was a baby." The housekeeper stopped what she was doing and looked at him with an expression of surprise, mixed with something that seemed like nostalgia. "Margaret, it's been so long since I've heard that name. Do you remember her?" "How could I forget? Margaret Wilson saved your life, Mr. Michael." The impact of her words hit him like a punch to the gut. Saved his life. "What do you mean she saved my life, Mrs.?" Margaret sat on the chair beside the bed, as if she needed support to tell the story. "You were less than a month old when you got very sick. A high fever that wouldn't break, trouble breathing. The doctors said it was a rare infection, hard to treat. Your mother was desperate. And Margaret? Margaret had just started working here a few days before. She was very young, but she had a special way with children. When you got sick, she volunteered to care for you day and night. She said she knew the signs, that she knew how to help." Michael's legs felt weak. He sat on the bed trying to process the information. The doctors didn't believe her, of course. A poor girl with no formal education. But your mother was so desperate she accepted her help. What did she do? Margaret created a special routine: lukewarm baths to control the fever, massages to help with breathing, an herbal mixture she learned from her mother. And she never left your side. She slept in the chair next to your crib, waking up every hour to check on you. And it worked? You gradually got better. It took almost 2 weeks, but the fever broke, and your breathing normalized. The doctors were surprised. They called it a miracle. Michael remembered the photo of Margaret bathing him in the sink. Now it made sense. Why did she leave the house? Mrs. Margaret took a deep breath. Margaret got pregnant. Back then, it was hard for a single maid to keep working in a family's home. Your mother helped her financially, but she had to find another job. Did she have a daughter? Yes, a little girl. A beautiful little girl. But after that, we lost touch. Margaret disappeared from town. Michael's heart raced. The puzzle pieces were starting to fit. Mrs. Margaret, Margaret's daughter. Did you ever learn her name? I don't remember, sir. But it was a pretty name, common. Started with an E, I think. Emily? Mrs. Margaret's eyes widened. Could be. Yes, it could be. Why do you ask? The nanny I fired, her name is Emily Wilson. The silence that followed was heavy. Mrs. Margaret brought a hand to her chest, clearly shocked by the revelation. Good heavens, Margaret's daughter came back to care for your son? It seems so. And you fired her? The question carried a tone of disbelief that made Michael feel even worse. Not only had he fired the daughter of the woman who saved his life, but he'd done it in the most humiliating way possible. I didn't know Mrs. Margaret. She never said anything about her family's connection to ours. Maybe she wanted to prove her worth on her own without using her mother's past. Michael stood and began pacing the room. His mind was racing, processing the enormity of what he'd just learned. I need to find her, he said. I need to talk to her, to apologize. Mr. Michael, there's something else you should know. What? Ethan. He has the same symptoms you had as a baby. The constant crying, the trouble regulating his body temperature. Margaret recognized the signs on the first night. That's why she bathed him in the kitchen sink. She knew it was urgent. The revelation struck Michael like lightning. Emily hadn't acted out of carelessness or ignorance. She had recognized in Ethan the same symptoms her father had shown decades earlier and had acted with the same dedication and knowledge her mother had displayed. Where can I find her? I don't know, sir, but I can try to find out. I know some people in the neighborhood where Margaret used to live. While Mrs. Elizabeth went out to investigate, Michael returned to Ethan's room. Barbara was still trying to calm the baby, who cried with a heartbreaking intensity. "Barbara, can you leave him with me for a moment?" "Of course, Mr. Parker. I'll rest a little." Alone with his son, Michael felt the weight of responsibility and regret. Ethan was clearly suffering, and he had pushed away the only person who seemed to know how to help him. He picked up the baby and walked to the window overlooking the garden. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawns. Everything in his life seemed perfect on the outside, but inside it was falling apart. "I'm sorry, my son," he whispered. "Daddy made a very big mistake." Ethan kept crying, but seemed to calm slightly in the warmth of his father's arms. Michael began to rock him gently, trying to remember how Emily did it when she wanted to soothe him. She always hummed softly, a simple melody Michael didn't recognize. Her movements were fluid, natural, as if caring for babies was instinctive for her. Now he understood where that ease came from. Emily had grown up hearing stories about babies, about special care, about recognizing signs of danger. Her mother had been a kind of guardian angel for him, and she was trying to be the same for Ethan. Mrs. Elizabeth returned late in the afternoon with valuable information. "I found Margaret's old neighbor. She told me Emily lives in a small apartment in Riverside, near the public hospital. She works there as a volunteer, caring for abandoned babies." "A volunteer?" "Yes, sir. She's a retired neonatal nurse. She worked for years at the children's hospital until she injured her back. Now she volunteers." Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Emily wasn't just an ordinary babysitter. She was a trained professional who had dedicated her entire life to caring for newborns. "Do you want the address?" "Yes, I'll go there now." "Mr. Parker, may I make a suggestion?" "Of course. Take Ethan with you. He needs Emily's care, and she needs to see that you recognize that." Michael nodded. Mrs. Elizabeth was right. It was time to swallow his pride and do what was best for his son. 20 minutes later, Michael drove through the city with Ethan in the back seat, still crying intermittently. The address led him to a modest neighborhood, with small houses and humble apartments, a stark contrast to the mansion he lived in. The building where Emily lived was old, but well kept. Michael climbed to the third floor with Ethan in his arms, his heart pounding with nerves and anticipation. When he rang the bell, he heard footsteps on the other side of the door. It opened slowly, revealing Emily with an expression of complete surprise. She looked different. She wore simple clothes, a light t-shirt and jeans, and her hair hung loose over her shoulders. But what struck Michael most were her eyes. They were red, as if she had been crying recently. "Mr. Parker," her voice came out in a whisper. "Emily, I need to talk to you, please." She looked at Ethan, who had stopped crying the moment he saw her. It was as if the baby recognized her, as if her presence alone was comforting. "Did something happen to Ethan? May I come in?" Emily hesitated for a moment, then opened the door completely. The apartment was small but impeccably clean and organized. The walls were decorated with baby photos, likely children she had cared for over the years. "Please have a seat," she gestured to the simple sofa in the living room. Michael sat down, still holding Ethan. The baby was now completely calm, his little eyes fixed on Emily. "Emily, I found out who you are." She lowered her head, as if she had been expecting this moment. "I found out about your mother, about what she did for me when I was a baby, and I found out you were a neonatal nurse." "Was," she corrected. "I was a nurse. Now I'm retired due to health issues. Why didn't you tell me this during the interview?" Emily looked up to meet his eyes. There was sadness there, but also a dignity Michael hadn't noticed before. "Because I wanted you to hire me for who I am today, not for what my mother did in the past." "But you knew Ethan was sick, didn't you?" "Yes," she admitted. "I recognized the symptoms on the first night. They're the same ones you had as a baby, according to the stories my mother told me all through my childhood. And the sink bath. The heater broke. The bathroom water temperature was unsafe. Ethan had hypothermia. I had to act fast." Michael felt guilt weigh on his shoulders like a mountain. "Emily, I'm sorry for reacting that way, for not listening to your explanations, for humiliating you." You don't need to apologize. I understand why you reacted like that. To someone who doesn't know the details, it must have seemed inappropriate. I need you to come back, he said, his voice urgent. Ethan hasn't stopped crying since you left. I've taken him to the doctor, tried other nannies, but nothing works. He needs you. Emily looked at the baby, who was now smiling faintly in his little arms. Mr. Parker, I can't come back. Why? Because of the pay? I can double what I paid before. It's not about money. She shook her head. It's about dignity. You fired me in front of your son, treated me like I was ignorant and careless. How can I come back after that? Michael understood her position. He had wounded not just her professional pride, but her dignity as a person. What can I do to make it right? Nothing, she said gently. What's done is done. But I can give you some guidance on how to care for Ethan until you find someone suitable. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now continuing. Over the next hour, Emily explained to Michael all the details about Ethan's condition. It was a rare genetic syndrome that affected a baby's ability to regulate body temperature. She had studied it extensively after caring for Michael decades earlier. Was Ethan's mother consulted about medical history during the pregnancy? Jessica? Yes, but she said there were no genetic issues on her side. Emily paused meaningfully. Mr. Parker, this condition is passed down through the father's side. What do you mean? You had this condition as a baby. There's a 40% chance of passing it to your children. Ethan inherited it from you. The revelation hit like a bucket of cold water. Michael had passed the genetic condition to his own son and hadn't even known he had it. Why didn't I ever know about this? Because your mother and my mother decided not to worry you. Back then, there wasn't much medicine could do beyond the special care my mother provided. You recovered and never had issues again. And Ethan? With the right care, he'll overcome this too. But he needs someone who understands the signs, who knows when to act quickly. You. Me, or someone with specific knowledge about this condition. Michael looked at his son in his arms. Ethan was calm, but he knew the moment they left, the crying would start again. Emily, I'm begging you. Not for my pride, not for my convenience, for Ethan's sake. He needs you. Mr. Parker. Calling me Mr. He interrupted her. That was part of the humiliation, wasn't it? Treating you like a subordinate when you know more about babies than I ever will. Emily didn't answer, but something in her expression softened. Call me Michael, and let me call you by your name as I should have from the beginning. It won't work, she said quietly. People in your social class don't mix things up. I'd always be the help, no matter how you treated me when we were alone. What people in my social class? Your mother, your friends, your girlfriends, Ethan's mother. The mention of Jessica made Michael remember another complication in the situation. Jessica had disappeared shortly after Ethan's birth, leaving only a note saying she wasn't ready to be a mother. But what if she came back? How would she react knowing a simple nanny was caring for her son? Jessica isn't part of my life, he said. She abandoned Ethan. She has no say in who cares for him. And your mother? My mother will understand when I tell her the whole story. Mrs. Elizabeth has always been grateful for what your mother did for me. Emily seemed to consider his words. Ethan began making small sounds. Not cries, but contentment. It was obvious he felt at ease in her presence. Can I think about it? Of course, Michael stood up. But please don't take too long. Ethan is suffering and I don't know what else to do. The vulnerability in his voice seemed to touch Emily. She also stood and stepped closer for one last look at Ethan. May I? She held out her arms. Michael handed the baby over without hesitation. Ethan immediately nestled against Emily's chest, closing his little eyes with a sigh of contentment. He remembers me, she whispered, a tear rolling down her face. You cared for him with love, Michael said. Babies feel that. Emily held Ethan for a few minutes, humming softly the same melody Michael remembered. The baby slept deeply in her arms, more relaxed than he'd been in a week. "Can I give you an answer tomorrow?" "Of course." When Michael took Ethan back, the baby woke and immediately began whimpering. The difference was striking. "Emily," he said before leaving, "thank you for seeing me. I know I don't deserve your consideration after what I did." "Everyone deserves a second chance," she replied. "My mother always said that." On the drive back home, Michael thought about all the decisions he'd made over the past week. How often had he judged situations by appearances? How often had he let social class bias influence his choices? Ethan cried the whole way, stopping only when Michael pulled over and tried to soothe him by humming the melody he'd heard Emily sing. He didn't know the words or the song, but something in the tune felt familiar. At home, Barbara was packing her things. "Mr. Parker, I need to be honest with you. I can't properly care for Ethan. He needs someone with more experience in special cases." "I understand," Michael said. "Thank you for your honesty. I could recommend some colleagues who specialize in—" "No need," he gently interrupted. "I think I already know who can help." That night, Michael barely slept. Ethan woke up several times crying, and each time it became harder to calm him down. Around 4 in the morning, the baby was inconsolable, crying with an intensity that even scared Mrs. Margaret. "Mr. Michael, I think it's best to call the doctor," she said, worried. "No," he replied, grabbing the phone. "I'm calling someone better." He called Emily. The phone rang several times before she answered, her voice groggy. "Hello?" "Emily, it's me, Michael. Ethan is really sick. He won't stop crying and he can't eat properly. Please, I need your help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Where are you now?" "At home. He's in my room. I can't leave him alone." "I'll be there." "Are you sure?" "Ethan needs me. I'll be there in 20 minutes." When Emily arrived, dressed in simple clothes and with a determined expression, Michael felt immense relief. She didn't ask about contracts or salaries. She went straight to the room where Ethan was crying in his crib. "How long has he been like this?" "About 2 hours intensely, but it's been getting worse all week." Emily picked Ethan up, and he immediately began to calm down. She examined him with experienced hands, checking his temperature, pulse, and breathing. "He's entering a more intense episode," she said. "I need to prepare a special warm bath." "Where's the bathroom closest to the kitchen?" "The powder room downstairs." "That'll be perfect." This time, Michael didn't protest when Emily took Ethan downstairs. He followed her, watching as she carefully prepared a basin of warm water, testing the temperature several times. "The temperature has to be just right," she explained as she worked. "Too cold and his condition worsens. Too hot, and it could cause other problems." "How did your mother learn this?" She cared for many babies with similar issues over the years. Some families in the area trusted her when doctors didn't know what to do. Emily gently lowered Ethan into the warm water. The baby stopped crying immediately, his muscles visibly relaxing. "See," she said softly, "the warm water helps regulate his body temperature. The crying lessens because the physical distress eases." Michael watched in fascination. Ethan seemed like a different baby in the water, calm and alert, looking at Emily with complete trust. "How long does he need to stay like this?" "About 15 minutes. Then I'll give him a special massage with warm oil, and he'll sleep peacefully for a few hours." "Lavender oil?" "Among others. It's a blend my mother developed over the years." As Ethan relaxed in the water, Michael and Emily talked more about his condition and the necessary care. "How long will this last?" "Usually the most critical phase lasts 4 to 6 weeks. After that, the baby's body learns to regulate itself, but he'll always need special care in the first few months of life." "And after that?" "Then he'll be a normal baby, with no lasting effects. You're proof of that." Michael looked at his son in the water and felt a mix of relief and gratitude. Without Emily, Ethan could have suffered much more, or worse. "Emily," he said, "I need you to come back officially. Not as a maid, but as a partner in caring for Ethan." "What do you mean?" "You're a specialized professional. I want you to work with us not as a nanny, but as Ethan's private neonatal nurse. with a salary that matches your qualifications, benefits, and the respect you deserve. Emily stopped stirring the water for a moment. Are you serious? Completely. And I want you to live in the house, not in the maid's quarters, but in one of the guest suites, with complete freedom to come and go. Why are you doing this? Because it's the right thing to do, because Ethan needs you, and because I need to learn to be a better father. Emily considered the proposal as she finished Ethan's bath. The baby was completely relaxed now, nearly asleep in the warm water. What if your family doesn't approve? My family will have to understand that Ethan's well-being comes first. What if his mother comes back? Jessica lost the right to have a say when she abandoned her son. But if she genuinely wants to be a mother again, we'll deal with it when the time comes. Emily lifted Ethan from the water and wrapped him in a warm towel. The baby sighed contentedly, clearly feeling better. All right, she said. I accept, but with a few conditions. What are they? First, if I ever feel Ethan isn't being treated with the love he deserves by anyone in the family, I'll leave immediately. Agreed. Second, I want complete freedom to use whatever treatments I think are necessary, no questions asked. Agreed. Third, if at any point you feel uncomfortable with me being here, tell me directly. I don't want to go through another humiliating situation. That will never happen again, Michael said firmly. You have my word. Emily nodded and headed to the kitchen to prepare the massage oils. Michael followed, carrying Ethan. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why didn't you ever marry or have children of your own? Emily paused her stirring for a moment. I had a daughter, she said softly. She was born premature, with many complications. I cared for her alone for 3 years before I lost her. Michael's heart clenched. Now he understood where Emily's dedication to babies came from, especially those needing special care. I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago, she continued, mixing the oils. After that, I decided to dedicate my life to caring for other people's children. It was my way of honoring my daughter's memory. What was her name? Emma. The name struck Michael like lightning. Emma. Ethan. The coincidence was unsettling, yet it also felt strangely meaningful. Do you think caring for Ethan is a way of... I don't believe in coincidences, she said gently. I believe some people come into our lives at the right time, for the right reason. Emily finished preparing the oil blend and asked Michael to lay Ethan on the living room sofa. With gentle, practiced movements, she began massaging the baby's chest and back. This helps circulation and calms the nervous system, she explained. My mother taught me this technique when I was a teenager. Ethan relaxed even more under Emily's delicate touch. Within minutes, he was fast asleep, breathing steadily and peacefully. There, she whispered. He'll sleep for at least 4 hours now. Michael looked at his sleeping son and felt overwhelming gratitude. Thank you, he said. Not just for tonight, but for everything. For caring for him when I didn't recognize his needs, for forgiving my ignorance, for giving our family a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, she repeated her mother's words. Even you. Michael, he corrected. Call me Michael. She smiled for the first time since arriving in the early hours. Michael. In the following days, the household dynamic changed completely. Emily settled into the second-floor guest suite, which overlooked the garden and had a small adjoining room where she organized her work supplies. Ethan responded wonderfully to her care. His crying spells decreased dramatically. He began eating better, and he slept for longer stretches. Most importantly, he was visibly happier, smiling often and responding positively to people around him. Michael started taking a more active role in his son's care. Emily taught him massage techniques, how to recognize signs of discomfort, and how to prepare therapeutic baths. Fatherhood isn't instinctive for everyone, she said one morning as she showed Michael how to properly change diapers. But it can be learned with dedication and love. My father wasn't very involved in raising me, Michael admitted. He believed childcare was women's work. And how did that make you feel? Distant from him. I always felt like I had to prove my worth, never that I was loved unconditionally. Then you already know what not to do with Ethan. Emily's observation made him reflect. How many family patterns was he repeating without realizing it? How many opportunities to connect with his son was he missing by following outdated models? During Emily's second official week of work, Mrs. Elizabeth returned from her trip. Michael was nervous about explaining the situation to his mother, but Emily seemed calm. "Your mother is an intelligent woman," she said. "She'll understand." When Mrs. Elizabeth walked into the room and saw Emily holding Ethan, she stopped mid-step. Her eyes widened in recognition. "My God, you're Margaret's daughter." "Yes, Ma'am." Mrs. Elizabeth approached slowly, tears in her eyes. "You have her same gentle way, the same tender way of holding a baby. My mother taught me everything I know. Where is she? How is she?" Emily lowered her gaze. "My mother passed away 5 years ago, Mrs. Elizabeth. Cancer." "Oh, my dear." Mrs. Elizabeth took Emily's hands. "Margaret was an angel in our family's life. She saved my son. And now, I hope I can help save her grandson." Mrs. Elizabeth looked at Michael, who watched the scene with emotion. "You hired Margaret's daughter to care for Ethan." "I hired Emily as a specialized neonatal nurse," he corrected. "She's extremely qualified." "And is Ethan responding well?" "See for yourself." Ethan was alert and smiling in Emily's arms, clearly comfortable and happy. The difference from the fussy, crying baby of 2 weeks ago was striking. "It's remarkable," Mrs. Elizabeth admitted. "He seems like a different baby." Over lunch, Michael told his mother the whole story. The hasty firing, the discovery of Emily's identity, Ethan's genetic condition, and finally the decision to bring her back in a role that respected her qualifications. "I'm proud of you," Mrs. Elizabeth said. "Admitting a mistake and correcting it properly is a sign of maturity." "I still feel guilty about how I treated Emily at first." "Guilt is only useful if it teaches us to do better next time," Mrs. Elizabeth observed. "What matters is that you learned." Mrs. Elizabeth's acceptance was crucial in solidifying Emily's place as part of the family. She not only approved of the young nurse's presence, but began treating her with the affection and respect of a daughter. "Your mother was very special to us," she told Emily in a private conversation, "and I see you've inherited not just her knowledge, but her generous heart." "Thank you, Mrs. Elizabeth. That means so much to me. Now you're part of this family, not as an employee, but as someone we've chosen to have with us." The household routine settled into harmony. Emily cared for Ethan with professional dedication, but also genuine love. Michael became increasingly involved in his son's care, learning not just techniques, but also the baby's silent language. Mrs. Margaret watched it all with satisfaction. "It's beautiful to see how things have fallen into place," she remarked to Mrs. Elizabeth. "It's as if the family is whole again." "Margaret always said things happen at the right time," Mrs. Elizabeth replied. "Maybe Emily came back into our lives exactly when we needed her most." But the family's peace would be tested a few weeks later when Jessica reappeared. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Michael was in the garden with Ethan, trying to teach his 2-month-old son to appreciate the outdoors, when he heard the doorbell. Emily was preparing the baby's bath, and Mrs. Elizabeth had gone out to visit a friend. Mrs. Margaret answered the door and returned with a worried expression. "Mr. Michael, there's a young woman at the door saying she's Ethan's mother." Michael's heart raced. Jessica. After 2 months of complete silence, she was back. "Let her in." Jessica Miller walked into the living room with the same elegance as always. At 26, she was a beautiful, upper-class woman, used to getting what she wanted. She wore designer clothes and carried a purse that cost more than most people made in a month. "Michael," she said, as if nothing had happened. "How are you?" "Jessica," he replied coldly. 2 months without a word, and now you show up like nothing happened." "I needed time to think, to get my life in order." "And did you come to any conclusions?" "Yes." She looked at Ethan in Michael's arms. "I want my son back." The statement landed like a bomb in the room. Michael felt anger rise, but he held it back for Ethan's sake. "Your son? You abandoned Ethan when he was a week old. You left a note saying you weren't ready to be a mother. I was confused, scared. Every woman goes through that after childbirth. No, Jessica, not every woman abandons their child when they need them most. Jessica stepped forward and tried to take Ethan, but the baby immediately started crying. It was obvious he didn't recognize her. He doesn't know me, she said, hurt. It's natural. Babies remember those who care for them with love and consistency. And who's been caring for him? It was then that Emily came downstairs to take Ethan for his bath. She stopped in the doorway when she saw Jessica, clearly sensing the tension in the air. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you had company," she said. "I can come back later." "No," Michael said. "Jessica, this is Emily, Ethan's neonatal nurse." "Emily, this is Jessica, Ethan's birth mother." The meeting between the two women was electric. Jessica looked Emily up and down, assessing her simple clothes and professional demeanor. "Neonatal nurse?" Jessica raised an eyebrow. "How fancy." Michael always did like giving grand titles to nannies. The jab was meant to belittle Emily, but she kept her composure. "I have a degree in nursing with a specialization in neonatology," she said calmly. "I work with Ethan because he has a condition that requires specialized care." "What condition?" Jessica turned to Michael and to, "What's wrong with my son?" "It's a rare genetic syndrome that affects body temperature regulation," Michael explained. "He inherited it from me." "And you didn't tell me?" "You didn't give me the chance. You disappeared before we even figured out what was happening." Jessica seemed to process the information, clearly uncomfortable with the idea that her son had health issues. "Is it serious?" "With the right care, no," Emily replied. "Ethan is responding very well to treatment. In a few weeks, the critical phase will pass." "And you think you can take care of my son better than I can?" The question was hostile, but Emily kept her tone professional. "I think I can provide the specialized care he needs at this specific stage of his life." "Michael," Jessica turned to him, "I want to talk to you alone." "Emily is family," he said. "You can speak in front of her." "Family?" Jessica laughed sarcastically. "Michael, you've always been naive, but hiring an expensive nanny and calling her family is too much even for you." "Jessica," Michael's voice dropped dangerously low, "I suggest you choose your words carefully." "Why? Are you going to defend me like a medieval knight? How romantic." Emily stepped closer. "I'll take Ethan for his bath," she said. "You two can talk more privately." When she reached out to take the baby, Ethan immediately stopped crying and snuggled against her. The contrast with his reaction to Jessica was obvious to everyone in the room. "Why does he react like that with her and not with me?" Jessica asked, clearly hurt. "Because she cares for him with love every day," Michael replied. "Because she wakes up in the middle of the night when he cries, because she knows every sound he makes, every expression on his face. I'm his mother." "No, Jessica. You're the one who gave birth to him. A mother is the one who cares, who worries, who sacrifices her own well-being for the child's." The words hit Jessica like slaps. She sat on the couch, visibly shaken. "I didn't know it would be so hard," she said quietly. "No one prepared me for the intensity of having a baby." "And that's why you ran away?" "I needed to think, to sort out my life. My career was taking off. Opportunities were coming up." "And you decided Ethan would get in the way of your plans." "It wasn't like that," she defended herself. "I thought maybe it would be better for him to stay with you. You have more resources, more stability. And now you've changed your mind?" "My therapist said it's normal to feel this initial confusion, that many women go through it and later regret it." Michael sighed. Part of him felt sorry for Jessica. She was young, carrying social and family pressures, and hadn't received proper support during the pregnancy. But another part of him was furious at her selfishness. "What do you want, Jessica?" "I want a chance to be a real mother. I want to take Ethan with me." "Where to?" "To Los Angeles. I got an apartment. I already hired a nanny." "A nanny?" Michael couldn't hide the irony. "I thought you wanted to be a real mother." "You know what I mean. I want Ethan to live with me, for me to be the main maternal figure in his life." "What about his medical condition?" "I'll hire the best doctors in Los Angeles. Money isn't an issue." Michael shook his head. It's not about money, Jessica. Ethan needs specific care, someone who understands the signs, who knows how to react quickly in case of an emergency. The nanny I hired has excellent references. It's not the same. At that moment, Emily returned with Ethan, clean and relaxed after his bath. The baby was smiling, clearly comfortable and happy. "Look at him," Michael said. "See how well he is, how healthy. That's the result of months of specialized care and full dedication. And you think I can't provide that? Honestly, I don't know. You've never tried." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. Elizabeth, who entered the room and immediately sensed the tension. "Jessica," she said with formal politeness, "what a surprise to see you here." "Mrs. Elizabeth, I came to get my son." "Your son?" The older woman raised her eyebrows. "Interesting. For the past 2 months, your son cried, got sick, needed specialized medical care, and you were nowhere to be found. I already explained I needed some time." "Time?" Mrs. Elizabeth sat elegantly in the armchair. "My dear, motherhood isn't something you can pause when it gets hard. With all due respect, Mrs. Elizabeth, matters between Michael and me are none of your concern." "Oh, but they are." Her voice grew colder. "Ethan is my grandson. I was here when he was born, when you decided to leave when he fell ill. I saw my son desperate, trying to care for a sick baby alone. I didn't know he was sick. You didn't know because you didn't want to know, because you didn't stay to find out." Jessica looked around the room, clearly feeling cornered. Her eyes landed on Emily, who was holding Ethan with ease. "And her," she pointed to Emily. "How long has she been here?" "Long enough to save Ethan's life twice," replied Michael. "Twice?" Michael recounted the first night of hypothermia and the crisis that had brought Emily back to the house. With each detail, Jessica seemed more uncomfortable. "Why didn't anyone call me when he got sick?" "Because you made it clear you didn't want to be bothered," said Mrs. Elizabeth. "Because you changed your phone number without telling anyone. I needed space." "And Ethan needed his mother," Michael shot back. The silence that followed was heavy. Ethan began making little sounds of contentment in Emily's arms, oblivious to the tension among the adults around him. "Can I hold him?" Jessica asked softly. Emily looked at Michael, who nodded. She carefully handed Ethan to Jessica. Jessica took her son cautiously, clearly nervous. Ethan looked at her curiously but showed no signs of distress. He was a naturally calm baby, as long as his basic needs were met. "He's grown so much," she said, tears in her eyes. "He looks so different." "Babies change quickly in the first few months," Emily said gently. "It's a phase of very rapid development." "How do you know so much about babies?" "I worked as a neonatal nurse for 15 years before retiring." "Why did you retire so young?" "Health issues," Emily didn't elaborate. Jessica continued holding Ethan, who remained calm. For a few minutes, the scene seemed almost normal, a mother holding her baby. "He's beautiful," she said. "He has your eyes, Michael." "And your nose," he replied. But then Ethan began showing signs of discomfort, little whimpers, restless movements. Jessica tried rocking him, but the whimpers turned into cries. "What do I do?" she asked, clearly panicked. "Try humming something," Michael suggested. Jessica tried, but her voice was tense, and Ethan cried louder. She looked at Emily in desperation. "Please, can you—" Emily stepped closer and began humming softly, without taking Ethan from Jessica's arms. Immediately, the baby calmed down, recognizing the familiar voice. "How do you do that?" Jessica asked. "Practice," Emily replied, "and knowing his patterns. Ethan has specific times for everything. It's almost time for his afternoon nap." "How do you know?" "Because caring for babies has been my profession for many years." Jessica handed Ethan back to Emily, clearly frustrated with her own inexperience. "Michael, I need to talk to you alone." "Emily, can you take Ethan to his room?" "Of course." When they were alone, Jessica collapsed onto the couch. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "I thought it would be easier." "Being a mother is never easy, Jessica, especially with a baby who has special needs." "Do you think I'm a terrible mother?" Michael chose his words carefully. "I think you're a young woman who made impulsive decisions. That doesn't make you terrible, just human. But it doesn't make me a good mother either. That depends on what you do from now on. What do you mean? If you really want to be Ethan's mother, you need to truly commit. Not just to the romantic idea of motherhood, but to the daily reality. The sleepless nights, the constant worries, the personal sacrifices. What if I can't? Then you need to be honest about that. Ethan deserves someone who's 100% committed to his well-being. Jessica fell silent for a few minutes, clearly wrestling with her feelings. "Can I make a proposal?" she said finally. "What? How about a trial period? I could stay here for a few weeks, learn how to care for him, see if I'm really ready." Michael considered the proposal. It wasn't what he wanted to hear, but perhaps it was the fairest solution for everyone. What if at the end of this period, you decide you don't want to be a mother? Then I'll legally give up custody and you can take care of him however you see fit. And if you decide you do want to, then we'll have to negotiate an arrangement that works for everyone, including Ethan. Michael nodded slowly. "All right, but with a few conditions." "What are they?" "First, Emily remains Ethan's primary nurse. You can learn from her, but she has the final say on medical care." "I agree." "Second, no sudden changes to Ethan's routine. He's stable now and can't be subjected to unnecessary stress." "I agree." "Third, if at any point I see your presence is harming Ethan, you leave immediately." "I agree." "And fourth, this is a trial for you, not a guarantee. Ethan isn't a toy you can return if you don't like him." "I understand." Michael took a deep breath. Part of him felt he was making a mistake, but another part recognized that Ethan had the right to know his biological mother, even if it was just to confirm she wouldn't be part of his life. "When do you want to start?" "Can I stay starting tomorrow?" "You can, but you'll stay in the first floor guest suite. Emily is on the second floor near Ethan's room." "Why?" "Because if Ethan has an episode during the night, Emily needs to be close by. You don't know how to recognize the signs yet." Jessica seemed to accept the explanation, though Michael could tell she didn't like the implied hierarchy. "I'll get my things," she said. "I'll be back tomorrow morning." "Jessica," Michael called as she headed for the door. "I hope you're being honest about wanting to learn how to be a mother. Ethan's already had enough instability in his life." "I'm being honest," she replied. "At least I hope I am." After Jessica left, Michael went upstairs to talk to Emily. He found her in Ethan's room, organizing the baby's clean clothes while he slept peacefully in his crib. "How are you feeling about all this?" he asked. "It's not about how I feel," she answered. "It's about what's best for Ethan." "But you have feelings about the situation." Emily stopped what she was doing and looked at him. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared that Jessica isn't truly committed and that Ethan will suffer for it. Scared she'll see me as a threat instead of an ally." "And me?" "You? Aren't you afraid I'll choose Jessica over you? That I'll decide Ethan should be with his biological mother no matter the consequences?" Emily considered the question. "No," she finally said, "because I've seen how you care for him, how you prioritize his well-being. You might make mistakes, but you always put Ethan first. Even when I fired you. Even when you fired me. You were trying to protect your son the way you thought was right. You were wrong, but your intentions were good." Michael felt grateful for her understanding, but also worried about what lay ahead. "What do you think will happen?" "Honestly, I think Jessica will realize motherhood is harder than she imagines. The question is whether she'll admit it or try to fake it until she figures it out. And if she tries to fake it, then we'll have problems, because Ethan will notice. Babies sense when they're not genuinely loved." The next morning, Jessica arrived with 2 large suitcases and a collection of expensive baby products she'd bought overnight. "I brought some things I thought Ethan might need," she said, showing off designer clothes, high-end toys, and imported hygiene products. Emily examined the items politely. "They're very nice," she said, "but Ethan has sensitive skin because of his condition. We need to use specific hypoallergenic products. These are the best on the market. They might be, but they're not right for him specifically." The first conflict of the day was set. Jessica had clearly spent a lot of money on the products and felt offended they were being rejected. "It can't be that complicated," she said. "He's just a baby." "Ethan isn't just a baby," Emily replied patiently. "He has specific needs that must be respected." During breakfast, Michael laid out the house rules for the adjustment period. "Emily will teach you Ethan's routine," he said. "Feeding times, bathing techniques, signs of discomfort. It's important you learn everything before trying to do it alone." "How long will that take?" "As long as it needs to, there's no rush." "But I'm his mother. Shouldn't it come naturally?" Emily and Michael exchanged glances. Jessica's naivety about motherhood was becoming clear. "Taking care of babies is a skill you learn," Emily explained. "Some women have a natural knack for it, others need more time. There's nothing wrong with needing to learn." The first day was challenging. Jessica tried to join in every activity, but her inexperience showed at every turn. She held Ethan stiffly, spoke too loudly, moved abruptly. The baby, sensitive to these nuances, grew fussier than usual. "Why is he so restless?" Jessica asked after several failed attempts to calm him. "Because you're tense," Emily said. "Babies pick up on our energy. If you're nervous, he gets nervous too." "How do I relax?" "Take deep breaths, speak softly, move slowly. Ethan needs to feel you're confident and calm." But relaxing was easier said than done. Jessica had built a mental image of motherhood based on movies and magazine photos. The reality was far more complex and exhausting. On the second day, she woke up late and found Emily already handling Ethan's morning routine. "Why didn't you wake me?" she asked. "You looked tired. I thought it best to let you rest. But I want to be involved." "Ethan wakes at 5:30 for his first feeding," Emily explained. "Then he sleeps until 7 when it's bath time and his second meal." 5:30 in the morning? Every day? Jessica seemed to process the information with discomfort. It was obvious she hadn't considered the practical side of a baby's schedule. By the third day, she tried taking on more responsibility. She insisted on preparing the bottle herself, but didn't test the temperature properly. Ethan refused the milk and started crying. "The temperature's wrong," Emily said. "Too hot." "How do you know?" "Experience, and because Ethan told me." "He doesn't talk." "Not with words, but he communicates in his own way. The type of cry, his body movements, his facial expressions. It's all communication." Jessica began watching Emily's interactions with Ethan more closely. It was like observing a silent dance. Emily anticipated the baby's needs, responded to the subtlest cues, and maintained a steady calm that soothed him. "How long did it take you to learn all this?" she asked. "Years," Emily answered honestly. "I've worked with hundreds of babies in my career, and each one is different." "Will it take me years to learn?" "Not necessarily, but it will take time and dedication." By the end of the first week, Jessica was visibly exhausted. The irregular hours, the constant attention Ethan demanded, the responsibility of making decisions for someone else's well-being, it all weighed on her. "It's harder than I imagined," she admitted to Michael one evening. "Most people underestimate what it means to care for a newborn," he said, "especially one with special needs. How do you handle it?" "Because he's my son. Because there's no alternative. Because every smile of his, every little progress, makes up for all the difficulties." "And did you feel that way from the very first day?" Michael reflected. "No, to be honest. At first I was panicking most of the time. It was Emily who taught me to look beyond the fear and insecurity. What if I never feel that way? Then it's better for everyone, especially for Ethan if you're honest about it." The second week brought new challenges. Ethan had a mild fever in the middle of the night. Emily handled the situation efficiently, but Jessica woke up in a panic. "What's happening? Is he going to be okay?" "He will," Emily said calmly, preparing a lukewarm bath. "It's a mild episode, very manageable." "Will this happen often?" "Less frequently as he grows. But yes, it might happen occasionally until his temperature regulation fully matures." Jessica watched Emily work, amazed by her competence and calm, but she also felt useless. "I wouldn't know what to do," she admitted. "That's why I'm here to teach you." "But what if you weren't? What if I were alone with him in Los Angeles and this happened?" "Then you'd call the doctor and follow his instructions, or call me, and I'd try to guide you over the phone." The thought of handling Ethan's medical emergency alone frightened Jessica more than she wanted to admit. Midway through the second week, she got a call from her modeling agency offering a major job. "It's an international campaign," she explained to Michael. 3 weeks in Paris, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And you want to take it? It's tempting. My career was taking off when I got pregnant. But you're here to learn how to be Ethan's mother. Can't I do both? Michael looked at her in disbelief. Jessica, you're barely managing Ethan's routine here with all the support and structure available. How do you expect to balance that with international travel? I could take him with me. Take him? A 2-month-old baby with health issues to another country. Babies travel all the time. Healthy babies with experienced mothers and proper medical care. Jessica fell silent, clearly torn between what she wanted and what she knew she should do. I need to think. No, Jessica, you don't. If you're considering leaving Ethan again for your career, then you already know your priority. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Either Ethan is your priority or your career is. You can't have both at this stage of his life. The argument escalated quickly. Jessica felt pressured, judged, misunderstood. Michael grew frustrated with what he saw as her selfishness. You don't understand, she said. I have dreams, ambitions. I can't just give up everything. No one's asking you to give up everything, but being a mother means making choices, setting priorities. And you've never had to choose between Ethan and your career. Every single day, Michael admitted, and every day I choose Ethan. Because you can. You have enough money to hire help, work from home, delegate responsibilities. I don't have those options. You have more options than you admit. The question is whether you want to use them. The fight echoed through the house. Emily tried to distract Ethan, but the tension was impossible to ignore. The next day, Mrs. Elizabeth stepped in. Jessica, dear, may I speak with you? They sat in the garden, away from the others. I know you're going through a difficult time, Mrs. Elizabeth began. Motherhood isn't easy for anyone. Everyone seems to think it should come naturally to me. It shouldn't. I had a terrible time when Michael was born. I cried every day, felt incompetent, questioned whether I'd made the right choice to have children. Really. The difference is, in my day, women didn't talk about these things. We pretended everything was fine and suffered in silence. How did you get through it? Time, support, and most of all, accepting that my life had changed forever. That some things I wanted to do would have to wait, and others would have to be let go. And you never regretted it? Sometimes, yes, Mrs. Elizabeth admitted. There were moments I wondered what my life would have been like if I'd made different choices. But overall, no. Michael brought more joy than sacrifice. What if I can't feel that way about Ethan? Then it's better for everyone if you're honest about it. Better for Ethan to have a father who loves him unconditionally than a mother who sees him as a burden. The conversation with Mrs. Elizabeth brought clarity to Jessica. She spent the rest of the day watching Ethan's interactions with the people caring for him. She saw Michael coming home exhausted from work, but lighting up the moment he saw his son. She saw Emily waking in the middle of the night to check on Ethan. She saw Mrs. Margaret insisting on preparing his baby food with special ingredients he tolerated better, and she wondered, would she ever feel that natural devotion? By the end of the second week, she'd made her decision. Michael, we need to talk, she said that Sunday morning. They met in the library, the same place where they'd had so many difficult conversations before. I've made a decision about the job offer, she said. Which is? I'm taking it. Michael felt a mix of relief and sadness. What about Ethan? Ethan stays with you. Permanently. Are you sure? I am. These 2 weeks showed me I'm not ready to be a mother. Maybe I never will be. Jessica, don't try to change my mind, she interrupted. I know it makes me sound awful, but it's the truth. When I look at Ethan, I see responsibility, sacrifice, limitations. You all look at him and see love, joy, purpose. Feelings can change over time. They can, but I shouldn't gamble his well-being on that. Michael nodded. It hurt to hear, but he respected her honesty. "What do you want legally?" "I want to formally relinquish custody. You can adopt Ethan as a single father or—" She hesitated. "Or what?" If you decide to make things official, she could adopt him too." The suggestion caught Michael off guard. "Jessica, Emily is Ethan's nurse. Our relationship is professional." "Is it?" She raised an eyebrow. "Because from the outside it doesn't look professional. It looks like a family." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Michael, you look at her the way my father looked at my mother, and she looks at Ethan like he's her own." Jessica's words echoed in Michael's mind for the rest of the day. Was it true? Had he developed feelings for Emily beyond professional gratitude? He watched her interactions with Ethan during dinner, the gentleness with which she held him, the way her face lit up when he smiled, the meticulous care she took with every detail of his routine. There was love there, not just professional competence, and when she looked at Michael, there was something in her eyes that went beyond collegial respect. A closeness, a connection that had grown over months of caring for Ethan together. But was it appropriate to consider a romantic relationship with someone he'd hired? Wouldn't there be an uncomfortable power imbalance? Michael decided to talk to Mrs. Elizabeth about his conflicted feelings. "Mum, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, son. How did you know you loved Dad?" "What an unexpected question," she smiled. "Why do you want to know?" "Just curious." "I knew because he made me feel complete, not in some silly romantic way, but in the sense that our life together was richer than our lives apart." "And if you had met under complicated circumstances?" "What do you mean?" "If he had been your employee, for example, or if there was a social class difference." Mrs. Elizabeth looked at her son with a knowing smile. "Is this about Emily?" Michael sighed. "Is it that obvious?" "To me it is. The way you work together, how you care for each other, how you look after Ethan like you're a team. It's beautiful to see. But what about the complications? The social difference, the fact she works for me?" "Michael, your grandmother was the daughter of poor immigrants. Your grandfather came from a wealthy family. They overcame those differences because the love was genuine and their values aligned." "What about the work situation?" "Emily isn't just an employee. She's a partner in caring for Ethan. And if there are mutual feelings, you can renegotiate the professional relationship." "Do you think she feels something for me?" "I think you should ask her." But before Michael could consider how to bring it up with Emily, a new crisis emerged. Jessica had left for Paris, but she left behind a legal time bomb. Her parents, who had been against the pregnancy from the start, decided they wanted custody of Ethan. Their lawyer showed up at the mansion on a Tuesday morning with a court order demanding Ethan be handed over to his maternal grandparents. "On what grounds?" Michael asked the lawyer. "My clients claim a single father cannot provide the proper family environment for a child, especially one with special medical needs." "That's ridiculous. Ethan is well cared for and has all the medical support he needs. But he lacks a stable maternal figure." "No, he doesn't. Emily cares for him as if he were her own son." "A nanny is not a legal maternal figure," the lawyer replied, "especially a single nanny with no children of her own." The legal battle that followed was intense. Jessica's parents hired the best lawyers in Los Angeles, arguing they had superior resources and family stability to raise Ethan. Michael hired his own lawyers, but knew the fight would be tough. Courts still favored traditional family arrangements, and a single father with a nanny might be seen as less ideal than grandparents married for decades. During the legal proceedings, which lasted weeks, Emily became a specific target for Ethan's grandparents' lawyers. "What kind of relationship do you have with my client?" their lawyer asked during a hearing. "I'm Ethan's neonatal nurse. Purely professional." "Yes." "There's no romantic involvement with the child's father?" "No." "Don't you find it problematic that a single woman with no children of her own is the primary caregiver for a child?" "I find it problematic that my professional competence is being questioned based on my marital status." "I'm not questioning your competence. I'm questioning whether this arrangement is best for the child." What's best for Ethan is being with people who love him and can properly care for his medical needs. "And do you believe you love this child?" The question caught Emily off guard. She looked at Ethan in Michael's arms, then at the judge, then back at the lawyer. "Yes," she said firmly. "I love Ethan as if he were my own." Emily's public admission changed the entire dynamic of the case. Now it was clear to everyone in the room that there was more than just a professional relationship between her, Michael, and Ethan. During the recess, Michael's lawyer pulled him aside. "We need to talk," he said. "Emily's testimony could help or hurt our case depending on how we present it." "How so?" "If she's just an employee who loves the child, it might seem inappropriate. But if she's a real maternal figure in Ethan's life, it strengthens our argument." "What are you suggesting?" "That you two consider formalizing your relationship. Marriage would give legal stability to the arrangement." Michael was shocked by the suggestion. "Are you talking about a marriage of convenience?" "I'm talking about a marriage based on genuine love for a child and mutual affection between adults. I've seen how you interact. It wouldn't be a sham. But would it be fair to Emily, proposing marriage to win a legal battle? Only you can answer that. But think about it. If you lose custody of Ethan, everyone loses. Especially Ethan." That night, Michael couldn't sleep. His lawyer's suggestion echoed in his mind, mixed with the confusing feelings he'd been developing for Emily. Would it be fair to propose marriage under such complicated circumstances? On the other hand, would it be fair to let Ethan go to people who didn't know his specific medical needs just because of pride or fear of romantic complications? He found Emily in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, preparing a bottle for Ethan, who had woken up crying. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "I've been thinking about what happened in court today. About my testimony, among other things." Emily finished preparing the bottle and turned to face him. "Michael, if my presence is complicating the legal process, I can step back. I don't want Ethan to suffer because of me. It's not your presence that's complicating things. It's the fact that we have a non-traditional family in a society that values conventional appearances." "A family? That's what we are, isn't it? You, me, and Ethan. It might not be the traditional arrangement, but we function as a family." Emily nodded slowly. "Yes, we do. Ethan is happy, healthy, loved. That should be what matters. But it's not what matters to the legal system." They fell silent for a moment, listening to the sounds of Ethan drinking contentedly. "Emily," Michael finally said, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "If circumstances were different, if there wasn't all this legal pressure, would you ever consider a romantic relationship with me?" The question hung in the air between them. Emily set the bottle down and looked into Michael's eyes. "Why are you asking this now?" "Because I've realized my feelings for you have changed. It started as professional gratitude, but it's turned into something deeper. Michael, I know the circumstances are complicated. I know it might seem like I'm confusing gratitude with love, but when I imagine my life without you, I can't. Not just because of Ethan, but because of who you are." Emily took a few steps back, clearly processing his words. "And you think I feel the same way?" "I hope so. But even if you do, would it be fair to start a romantic relationship in the middle of all this?" "I don't know," she admitted. "My feelings have changed over these months too. But I don't know if it's for you specifically, or just having a family again, even if temporarily. How can we figure it out?" "Maybe it's best to focus on Ethan now and leave our personal feelings for after the legal situation is resolved. And if we lose Ethan, if he goes to live with his grandparents, then we'll have other worries beyond our feelings." The conversation was interrupted by Ethan finishing his bottle. Emily picked him up to burp him, and Michael watched the scene with a mix of love and fear of losing everything. The next day, Michael's lawyer proposed a different strategy. "Instead of focusing on the relationship between you and Emily, let's focus on her medical expertise and the stability Ethan currently has." "How?" "We'll bring in the pediatrician to testify about Ethan's improvement under Emily's care. We'll show medical records, photos, videos of his progress. Will that be enough? We'll find out." The next hearing was different. Instead of attacking the family arrangement, Michael's lawyer defended Ethan's well-being as the top priority. Dr. Robert testified about Ethan's rare medical condition and how Emily's specialized care had been crucial to his recovery. Without this specific care, the doctor said, Ethan could have developed serious, perhaps irreversible complications. "And can anyone learn this care?" asked the grandparents' lawyer. "Theoretically, yes, but it requires technical knowledge, practical experience, and full dedication. Emily Wilson has all three qualifications. And couldn't the child's grandparents hire equally qualified professionals? They could try, but finding someone with the specific combination of technical skill and personal dedication would be very difficult." The medical testimony was convincing, but the grandparents' lawyer didn't give up. "Your Honor," he said, "we're not questioning the nurse's competence. We're questioning whether a child should be raised by people with no real family ties to him." "Emily Wilson has no family ties to Ethan?" asked the judge. "Not legally. She's an employee, no matter how dedicated." That's when Michael made a decision that stunned everyone in the room. "Your Honor," he stood up, "may I make a statement?" "You may." "I want to formalize my intention to marry Emily Wilson and adopt Ethan together." The room fell completely silent. Emily looked at him with total shock. "Mr. Parker," the judge said, "this is a very important decision. Are you sure?" "I am, Your Honor. Emily and I have been a family in every way for months. We want to make it official." The grandparents' lawyer jumped up. "This is clearly a legal maneuver, a marriage of convenience to gain custody." "May I respond to that?" Emily asked, standing. "You may. Your Honor, I love Michael Parker and accept marrying him, not for legal convenience, but because we've built something real and beautiful together, centered on our love for Ethan." Emily's words struck Michael like lightning. She'd publicly accepted in front of everyone, risking appearing calculating or opportunistic. The judge called a recess to consider the new developments. During the break, Michael and Emily met in the courthouse hallway. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Why put me in that position?" "Because I realized I'd rather risk looking manipulative than risk losing Ethan. And you." "What if I'd publicly refused?" "Then I'd have been publicly humiliated, but at least I'd know where we stand. And now that I've publicly accepted? Now we need to decide if we want this to be real or if it was just a performance for the court." Emily looked into his eyes for a long moment. "If we're doing this, it has to be real. I can't pretend to love you to save Ethan and then live a lie for the rest of my life. And can you love me for real? Not just the situation, but me?" "I already do," she admitted. "I've been fighting it for weeks, thinking it would be inappropriate, too complicated. But I already love you." Michael felt immense relief. He kissed her right there in the courthouse hallway, sealing the commitment they'd just made public. The judge returned with a surprising decision. "Considering all the testimonies and evidence presented," he said, "I rule that Ethan remains under the current custody arrangement for 3 more months, during which I will observe the stability of the new family dynamic." "What do you mean, Your Honor?" asked the grandparents' lawyer. "If Mr. Parker and Mrs. Wilson marry and demonstrate they can provide a stable and loving home for Ethan, I will grant permanent paternal custody. If there is any instability or evidence this was merely a legal convenience, I will reconsider custody in favor of the grandparents." It was a conditional victory, but a victory nonetheless. Leaving the courthouse, Michael, Emily, and Ethan, who had slept peacefully through the entire hearing, headed home as an official family. "So," Michael said in the car, "shall we get married?" "We shall," Emily replied, "but I want to do it right, with family, a celebration, everything proper." "Why?" "Because I want Ethan to grow up knowing his parents married for love, not legal convenience." "How long do we need to organize everything?" "A month?" "Perfect." The following month passed in a whirlwind. Mrs. Elizabeth took charge of the wedding arrangements with an energy that surprised everyone. "Finally, I'll have a daughter-in-law who gave me a healthy grandson," she told Emily, "and who saved my son from becoming a lonely workaholic." "Mrs. Elizabeth, I didn't save anyone. I just did my job." "Darling, loving someone is never just a job." The wedding took place in the family chapel, with a small reception in the mansion's garden. Ethan, now 4 months old and visibly stronger and healthier, was the special ring bearer carried in Mrs. Margaret's arms during the ceremony. During the vows, Michael said, "Emily, you came into my life to care for my son, but you ended up caring for our entire family. I promise to be the husband you deserve and the father Ethan needs." Emily replied, "Michael, you gave me the chance to be a mother again, to have a family again. I promise to love you and Ethan with all my heart, no matter what." When the priest declared them husband and wife, Ethan let out his first loud laugh as if celebrating with them. 3 months later, the judge officially granted permanent custody of Ethan to the couple. The maternal grandparents withdrew their appeal, acknowledging the boy was clearly happy and well cared for. A year after the wedding, Michael and Emily were in the garden watching Ethan take his first steps. At 15 months, he was completely healthy, with no trace of the condition that had complicated his early months. "Do you regret anything?" Michael asked. "What?" "Accepting my crazy proposal in court, marrying me under such complicated circumstances." Emily looked at Ethan, wobbling toward them, then at Michael. "If I hadn't accepted, I wouldn't have this life. I wouldn't be the mother of this wonderful boy or married to the man I love. And I wouldn't be the father I am today if you hadn't come into our lives," Michael said. "In fact, Ethan probably wouldn't even be here if you hadn't recognized the signs that first night." Ethan reached them and threw himself into Emily's arms, laughing. "Mama," he said clearly. It was one of his first words, and the choice couldn't have been more perfect. "Did you hear that?" Emily said with tears in her eyes. "He called me Mama." "Because that's exactly what you are," Michael replied, "in every way that matters." That night, after putting Ethan to bed, Michael and Emily sat on the porch gazing at the stars. "You know what's funny?" Emily said. "It all started with you thinking I'd done something terrible by bathing him in the kitchen sink. And now? Now you know appearances can be deceiving, that what seems wrong on the outside may be exactly what's right. Like our marriage? Like our marriage. To those looking in, it might seem like we married out of convenience, but we know the truth." "What truth?" "That we married for love. Love for Ethan. Love for each other. Love for the family we built together." Michael kissed his wife, grateful for all the misjudgments that had led him to that moment of perfect happiness. Ethan grew up knowing he had been deeply loved from the very first day, that his parents had fought for him, that his family had been chosen with care and intention. At 5 years old, when he was old enough to understand more complex stories, Emily told him about the first night she took care of him. "You were sick and Daddy didn't know how to help you, but I did because my mommy had taught me. And you gave me a bath in the kitchen sink." "I did. Because sometimes we have to do things that seem strange to others when we want to help someone we love." "And was Daddy mad?" "Very mad. So mad he sent me away." "But you came back." "I came back because you needed me, and because I ended up realizing I needed you too." Ethan processed the story with the seriousness of a bright child. "So you saved my life?" "We saved each other," Emily said. "You gave me a family, Daddy gave me a home, and I gave you all the love I had stored in my heart." Years later, when Ethan was in college studying medicine, he came home for the holidays and asked to see old family photos. There were hundreds of them, baby Ethan in Emily's arms, his first steps, his first words, his first day of school. But the photo that caught his attention the most was one from his baptism. In it, Michael held Ethan while Emily poured warm water over his head into a special basin. It was an intimate family baptism, full of meaning. "Why did you choose to do the baptism like this?" he asked. "Because we wanted to honor the way your life was saved," Michael explained, "with warm water, gentle care, and lots of love." "In the kitchen sink?" "No," Emily laughed. "We learned our lesson. We did it in the bathroom sink, much more appropriate." Ethan smiled, finally understanding the poetic irony of his own story. "So my life really began in a sink." "Your life really began when people who loved each other came together to care for you," Emily said. "The sink was just the setting." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of love and perseverance. Ethan was lucky to have people who fought so hard for him, don't you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments about the choices Michael and Emily made. Do you believe they did the right thing by marrying under those circumstances? Would you like to hear more stories like this? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.